She did not leave with anger. She did not leave with a plan. She left with 2 suitcases, 2 car seats, and twins who were too young to understand why Mama was crying in the bathroom with both faucets running. That was a Tuesday in Denver, Colorado. 2 years later, on a warm June evening, a black Rolls-Royce Cullinan pulled up to the most exclusive event venue in the city. A red carpet already rolled out, 2 suited guards stepping out first, then a door opening, then a woman descending in a deep burgundy gown that made every person within 50 feet forget whatever they were talking about. That woman was Rachel Emerson, and 30 feet away, frozen at the entrance of the same venue in a rented tuxedo, stood the man who had watched her load those suitcases into a second-hand Honda and driven away without once looking up from his phone. What happened next, on that red carpet under that Denver sky, is the kind of story people do not believe until they hear every piece of it. Before we get into this story, hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop your location in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from right now? We want to know exactly where this story is reaching today. Nathan Cole was the kind of man who needed to be the most impressive person in every room he entered. He had built a mid-size real estate and luxury goods company in Denver on relentless deal chasing and a smile that arrived just before the handshake. Status hungry. The kind of man who measured everything, his car, his address, his wife, against what it said about him to the people watching. He had one specific weakness, one exploitable, devastating weakness. Nathan Cole could not resist a deal that felt like winning. When the numbers looked too good, he did not ask questions. He leaned forward. He signed. And he told himself he was simply smarter than everyone else in the room. He was not smart. He was hungry. And hunger without judgment is just an open door. For 7 years, he turned that same energy on Rachel. Not loudly, quietly, chipping at the edges of who she was with the patience of a man who understood that if you remove things slowly enough, the person being reduced will blame themselves before they blame you. A comment here, a silence there. A way of discussing her design work that made it sound smaller every time he mentioned it. By year 3, she had left her studio job. By year 6, when their twins Lily and Mason were born, she was entirely financially dependent on a man who had engineered that dependence so gradually she had not seen it being built. She was a gifted graphic designer, genuinely gifted. Nathan did not take that from her in one dramatic moment. He made her believe, over years, that it was not worth keeping. She sees every brick of that wall now, every single one. She did not find out about the other woman dramatically. No confrontation, no confession. Just a bedroom Bluetooth speaker that connected automatically to Nathan's phone when he walked through the door one Tuesday night. And a voicemail he had forgotten to check, playing out loud through that speaker before either of them realized what was happening. A woman's voice, easy, familiar, saying his name the way a woman only says a man's name when she has been saying it in private for a very long time. Nathan stood in the doorway. Rachel sat on the edge of the bed, folding laundry. They both went completely still. The voice kept going. The room filled up with it. She looked at him with eyes that had already understood everything. Not just this moment, but the shape of the last 7 years, suddenly visible all at once. She said one word, just one. Then she set down the pillowcase, stood up, and walked past him without another sound. She did not cry until she was in the bathroom with both faucets running at full pressure. The specific kind of crying that belongs only to women who have learned to protect their children from the sound of their own hearts breaking. She cried for 20 minutes. Then she washed her face, straightened her spine, and walked out of that bathroom a different woman than the one who had walked in. He moved Courtney into the house 11 days after Rachel left it. A few years passed. One evening, Rachel found out the way she found out most things during that period, through Mason. And constitutionally incapable of keeping information to himself, he reported on his last visit that Daddy's friend had rearranged the kitchen, bought a new coffee maker, and smelled like the perfume section of a department store. Rachel smiled at him in the rearview mirror and drove to her sister Jenna's apartment, gave herself exactly 20 minutes to feel everything. Then she washed her face, opened her laptop, and started building. The apartment she found was in 5 points, small. The twins shared a room. A leak under the kitchen sink took the landlord 6 weeks to fix. She loved that apartment like it was a person. It was the first space in years that was entirely, uncomplicatedly hers. She took every freelance design job she could find. She studied brand strategy at 11 at night while Lily and Mason slept. Laptop on the coffee table, eyes burning, refusing, absolutely refusing, to stop. The newsletter started as a place to put the truth of what she was living. She called it the second draft, because that is exactly what she was. A second attempt at herself, revised and still in progress, and better for every edit. 12 months of that grind, and something shifted. People found the second draft, then more people, then tens of thousands, then over 100,000 people who were all searching for the same thing. Someone willing to say honestly what it looks like to start over when starting over was never part of the plan. The newsletter became a brand. The brand became a business, partnerships, licensing deals, speaking invitations, a book proposal sitting on an agent's desk in New York. Her lawyer, Gloria, called 18 months after the divorce and told her the conversation about her settlement was worth having again, because what she had built had changed the numbers considerably. Rachel thought about the word reasonable, the word Nathan's attorney had used like a scalpel to make less sound like more. She told Gloria, "Let's revisit, now." Before the evening of June 14th. You need to know who Courtney Briggs really was, because this story has a second layer. And that second layer is where karma lives, cold and patient and extraordinarily precise. Courtney Briggs was a senior acquisitions director at Vantara Group, one of the most powerful precious stones conglomerates on the planet, a company worth hundreds of billions, operating across 4 continents, handling some of the rarest certified diamonds in existence. She had been stealing from Vantara for 2 years before she ever met Nathan Cole. Not carelessly, not impulsively, with the surgical, deliberate patience of someone who understood exactly what she was doing. She identified stones moving through low-visibility internal channels, diverted them before certification was completed, built a quiet inventory of untracked diamonds worth tens of millions. She had the stones. What she needed was a buyer, specifically a legitimate business with enough transaction volume that irregular purchases would not stand out. Run by a man hungry enough to ask no questions, vain enough to believe he had simply found a remarkable connection, greedy enough that the thrill of a below-market deal would override every instinct telling him to stop. She did not stumble onto Nathan Cole. She researched him, studied his acquisition patterns, read every interview he had ever given, mapped his ego against his judgment, and found the gap between them exactly wide enough for her purposes. She attended a Denver industry conference specifically because she knew he would be there. She walked into that room already knowing precisely what she was going to do. She introduced herself, mentioned she had access to certified precious stones at significantly below market rates. Her voice was easy. Her manner was warm. Her eyes were already calculating. Nathan Cole heard below-market rates and felt that familiar electricity. He asked no questions. Over the following months, Courtney systematically diverted stolen diamonds from Vantara and sold them to Nathan's company, repeatedly across multiple transactions, each one documented with his signature on the purchase order. His accounts, his inventory, his margins looking extraordinary. He thought he had found a brilliant woman with access no one else had. He was laundering stolen diamonds through his own company and signing every page of the evidence himself. Courtney did not love Nathan Cole. She selected him, the way a professional selects the right instrument for a specific task. His greed was not a flaw she tolerated. It was the quality she had specifically been searching for. Meanwhile, Vantara Group had noticed the inventory discrepancies 14 months earlier. Quietly. A company worth hundreds of billions does not make noise when it begins an investigation. The trail led to Courtney within months. And through Courtney, through every transaction, every routing, straight to Nathan Cole. His accounts, his records, his signature on purchase order after purchase order for diamonds he had no legitimate right to own. The FBI Financial Crimes Division coordinated with Vantara's legal team for months, building the case until it was airtight, waiting until every piece was in place. They chose the evening of June 14th to move. It was, by coincidence, the same evening Nathan Cole had booked the east wing of the Crawford for his wedding reception. The same evening, Elliot Mara had arranged a private event in the west wing. 2 bookings. 1 building, 1 night. The universe, it turns out, has a very specific sense of timing. His name was Elliot Mara, and he arrived in Rachel's life the way the best things do, without announcement, without performance, in the most ordinary possible way. 3 sentences in an email, no flattery, nothing performed. He had been reading the second draft for 7 months. He had forwarded one particular piece about creative paralysis, about the specific terror of beginning again, to every person on his team. He wanted to say thank you in writing because he believed in doing that. Blueprint Studio, 39 employees, a reputation built entirely on substance. The kind of company that wins awards and hangs them in the supply closet. They got on a call. He listened the way very few people listen, not waiting for his turn, actually receiving what she was saying and doing something thoughtful with it. He disagreed with her about something without condescension, just honest friction between 2 people who both knew the subject. It was the most refreshing professional conversation she had experienced in years. She told herself it was professional. She told herself that for 5 months. Then she ran completely out of ways to pretend. One evening at a restaurant in the Rhino neighborhood, exposed brick walls, a pasta special she still thinks about. He reached across the table during a comfortable silence and said he had been trying to find the right moment for something. That there was no right moment, only this one. That he was no longer interested in a collaboration. He was interested in her. If that was something she was open to, he wanted her to know. She looked at this man who had asked about her children on their very first call, who had disagreed with her honestly, and never once, not even accidentally, made her feel small for it. She told him she was open to that. He smiled, slow and real and entirely unrehearsed. Then he told her his mother had been asking about her for 3 weeks, and he had not known what to say. She laughed so genuinely that the table beside them smiled without knowing why. He walked her to her car. She turned to say goodnight. He looked at her for just a moment, the way a man looks when he has already made a decision. And then he kissed her. Gentle. Certain. like punctuation at the end of a sentence that had been a long time coming. When he pulled back, she forgot entirely what she had been about to say. He smiled, told her good night, and walked away like a man who knew exactly what he had just done. Elliot met Lily and Mason at a Sunday breakfast at a diner the twins loved. Mason spent 45 minutes explaining his Hot Wheels collection in the level of detail most adults would not sustain. Elliot sustained every word, asked follow-up questions, and committed the names of 12 favorite cars to memory. Mason audited this the following week with the gravity of a completed official review, filed a positive result. Lily watched Elliot for the entire first hour before speaking to him directly. When she finally did, she looked at him carefully and said, "My mama smiles differently when you're here." Then she picked up her fork and returned to her pancake as though she had filed a factual report and moved on. He made Rachel feel like every part of her was exactly the right size. Not too much, not too little, like she was precisely herself. And that self was precisely what he wanted. She had forgotten that feeling was possible. If you are enjoying the story so far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Your support means a lot and helps us bring you more exciting and heartfelt stories. Thank you. Back to the story. The night of June 14th, Elliot told her to wear whatever made her feel most like herself. She chose deep burgundy, a color she had never worn during her marriage because Nathan preferred her in soft, forgettable things that did not call attention. Floor length, a neckline bold without apology, her grandmother's gold cuff at her wrist. She wore her hair the way she wore it when she was not performing anything for anyone. Natural, free, entirely hers. She stood in front of the mirror in her 5 Points apartment and looked at herself for a long moment. She did not see the woman who had stood in that bathroom with both faucets running. She saw herself, the fullest, most complete version of herself she had ever seen in a mirror, standing on her own ground. The twins came too. Elliot had arranged it. This moment needed them. Mason wore a small navy blazer with the absolute solemnity of someone receiving a national honor. Lily wore a pink dress she had selected herself, paired with her sneakers, which Elliot had said was completely and perfectly right. The car that arrived outside was a black Rolls-Royce Cullinan. Rachel stood on that sidewalk and felt something crack open inside her. Not sadness, the opposite of sadness. The full, arriving recognition of distance traveled. Elliot opened the door, told her simply, she had earned this. She got in. Mason pressed his nose to the window immediately. Lily sat with her hands folded in her lap with the composure of someone who had always known a moment like this would come. They drove through Denver in the blue gold of a June evening. Elliot held her hand the entire way. He understood the weight of quiet. It was one of the things she loved most about him. The Crawford, grand stone steps, iron lanterns, a red carpet running from the curb to the entrance. When the Rolls-Royce pulled up, 2 suited guards stepped out. The door opened. Rachel stepped out. And the world went still in that particular way it goes still when something unexpected and undeniable walks into it. Elliot stood at the base of the steps in a midnight blue tuxedo. He walked toward her, took both her hands, said nothing for a moment, just looked at her the way a man looks when he needs to see something completely before he can speak. Then he said hello, softly, just that, and she said hello back. What neither of them knew, what no one had planned, what the universe had arranged entirely on its own, was that 30 feet away, Nathan Cole had just arrived at the same venue. Tuxedo, Courtney on his arm in white. Their wedding reception waiting in the East Wing. Guests from both events had gathered outside. 2 worlds landing in the same place on the same evening. Nathan's eyes found Rachel. The first thing that crossed his face was pure blankness, then recognition, then the full, slow, crushing weight of everything he was seeing. The gown, the car, the red carpet, Elliot Mara, whose name Nathan knew well in Denver business circles, holding her hands as though she was something precious he had been trusted to carry carefully. And stepping down from that car behind her, Lily and Mason, his children, well-dressed, healthy, bright-eyed, more beautiful than he had allowed himself to imagine during all the months he had spent telling himself they were fine. Mason waved at his father, with the pure, cheerful openness of a child who does not yet understand what that wave was communicating to the man receiving it. Nathan understood every single thing it said. The crowd went quiet, and into that silence, in front of Nathan Cole, in front of both crowds, on that red carpet under the wide Denver sky, Elliot Mara slowly lowered himself to one knee. He opened a small box, dark green velvet, a solitaire that caught every available light and sent it back doubled. He looked up at her and spoke, calmly, clearly, without a rehearsed word. He told her he had written speeches for weeks and deleted every one because they all sounded like speeches. So he was going to say the true thing instead, that she had built something extraordinary from something that would have destroyed most people, that she had done it while raising two children who were the most interesting small humans he had ever encountered, that she had done it without ever becoming hard or bitter or small. And he knew exactly what that cost. And that told him everything he would ever need to know about who she was. He said he wanted to be at her table, every night, for the rest of whatever they had. Then he looked up at her and asked the only question that mattered. Will you build the rest of this life with me? The crowd held its breath. Nathan Cole stood 30 feet away and heard every single word. Then Mason, 6 years old, navy blazer, entirely unable to contain himself, shouted across that red carpet, "Say yes, Mama! Say yes, Mama!" Lily looked at her mother, composed, certain, and nodded once. The nod of someone confirming what was already obvious. Both crowds erupted, strangers from two different events standing together on those stone steps, cheering for a woman most of them had never met. Because some moments are so undeniable and so complete that even strangers feel them as their own. Rachel looked down at this man kneeling before her. This man who had memorized toy car names and never once made her feel small and put down a red carpet not to show the world something, but to show her, specifically and only her, what she was worth to someone who had actually, genuinely been paying attention. She said yes. The easiest word she had ever spoken in her life. The crowd roared. She pulled him to his feet and kissed him on that red carpet. Warm, certain, unhurried. The kind of kiss that rewrites something permanent. Mason jumped up and down. Lily smiled the smile of someone whose assessment had been formally confirmed. And Nathan Cole wept. Not quietly, not with dignity. The way a man weeps when 2 years of consequences arrive simultaneously with nowhere left to put them. His hand pressed flat against his chest, his jaw working, searching for something solid and finding nothing. Courtney stood beside him in her wedding gown and said nothing. She had spotted the two plainclothes officers 20 minutes earlier. She knew exactly what they were. She had simply been waiting. The two plainclothes officers had been there all evening, patient, still, watching. They stepped forward with the calm efficiency of people who have done this many times before. One addressed Courtney, the other turned to Nathan. Both were being placed under arrest. The case, months in the building, every transaction documented, every signature cataloged, had reached its end. Nathan's head turned to Courtney, slowly, still hoping for an explanation he had not yet heard. There was not one. Courtney pulled her arm from his, and her composure finally broke, not into remorse, but into something colder. She had been careful. Every transaction, every stolen stone moved quietly, every record clean. For 2 years, she had been invisible. Then she brought Nathan in as her buyer. And Nathan, greedy, careless, drunk on the thrill of a good deal, had recorded every single purchase loudly through his own company accounts. His name on every page. His signature on every order. A paper trail so wide and so obvious that when investigators found her, they found him in the same breath. She had been a ghost. He had made himself a billboard. His carelessness had not just exposed him, it had exposed her. Nathan stared at her, the woman he had left his family for, telling him, in her wedding dress, in front of federal officers, in front of every guest who had come to celebrate them, that he had always been nothing more than the most useful fool she had found. His voice when it came was barely a sound. He asked her if any part of it had been real. Any of it. She looked at him with eyes that had already moved past this moment entirely. She said nothing. And that silence, that complete, indifferent, devastating silence, was the only honest answer she had ever given him. The handcuffs went on in full view of both crowds, in full view of the red carpet, in full view of the ring now sitting on Rachel's finger, catching the last warm light of the June evening. Regret moved across Nathan's face like weather. Not the clean regret of a man who made one wrong turn. The deep, suffocating, final regret of a man seeing, all at once, with complete clarity, the entire architecture of his choices. That the same hunger that had made him chip away at Rachel had made him the perfect target. That Courtney had studied him before she approached him, had mapped the gap between his ego and his judgment, and walked toward him, already knowing what she was going to take. He had not left Rachel for something better. He had left Rachel and been systematically emptied by someone who had selected him specifically because he was the kind of man who could be. The officers walked them toward the waiting vehicles. One of them, just before he turned away, glanced back at the red carpet, at Elliot and Rachel, at Mason and Lily, at the crowd still alive with the electricity of what they had witnessed. He allowed himself one quiet, unhurried smile. Some evenings, justice arrives right on time. Rachel and Elliot were married that September. A mountain estate, 300 people, every person who had shown up for the rebuilt version of her life, and every person who deserved to witness where it had arrived. Mason carried the rings with the focused intensity of someone executing a mission of national importance. Lily distributed petals with precision and zero deviation from her internal plan. Rachel walked herself down the aisle. Her father had offered. She thanked him and told him, "I built this with my own feet. I want to arrive on them." He understood. He squeezed her hand and took his seat. And she walked forward alone, in a gown that was everything bold and soft and completely hers, into the best decision of her life. Elliot cried when he saw her. 2 tears, quiet, no performance. She had never once seen him cry. She had believed that was strength. She understood now it was the opposite. Strength is feeling everything and not running from it. A year later, Rachel gave birth to twins again, a boy and a girl, Daniel and Eva. Daniel with Elliot's eyes and Rachel's stubbornness, a combination that announced itself within the first week. Ava, arriving 12 minutes later, calm and observant, already looking at the world exactly the way Lily had always looked at it, like someone taking careful notes. Mason received the news of new siblings with the gravity of someone assuming a great responsibility and immediately informed the nursing staff of his qualifications. Lily sat beside Rachel's bed, holding Ava, with the careful focus of someone who had been waiting for this specific job and intended to do it properly. 4 children, 1 table, 1 man who saw all of it and would not change a single piece. Neither would she. The person who quietly makes you smaller is not stronger than you. They are terrified of how large you would become if they ever stopped. The love that is real will not ask you to be less. It will want your full wingspan. Go build the life that brings you there. Refuse to stop. Everything you are about to become is worth every piece of the road it takes to get there. Every single piece. If you enjoyed this love story, please like, comment, and subscribe to see more heartfelt tales. Your support helps us continue creating the stories that make your heart race.